when we look at wildfires, we think of the acute effects, and we mention the acute lung effects,
Yes.
right? Obviously, because you're inhaling that smoke, there's going to be lung effects.
Yes.
Carbon monoxide, that also causes issues, doesn't it?
Of course, carbon monoxide, it's a well-known irritant of the lung tissue. So obviously you have the acute effects of the fires, and also long-term effects,
Yeah.
because you have a damage to that lung tissue that will remain for a while. I mean, we know that the long-term exposure to air pollution has long-term effects that are both cardiovascular, diabetes, neurological too. I mean, there is an increased risk of dementia, Parkinson's, as you said. There's a number of these conditions of exposure to air pollution, and now, of course, wildfires.
Yeah. I feel like I wouldn't be complete if I didn't talk about carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh, of course.
Right? Carbon monoxide poisoning. So carbon monoxide is a gas, and when you inhale this molecule, what it actually does is it binds all of your oxygen. It takes it away from the hemoglobin that's supposed to be carrying the oxygen in your bloodstream. And as a result of that, you start to get a headache, and then the headache can get worse, and you can actually go into a coma. And the way to actually treat it is to basically put you on oxygen and support you. So we have to remember that. So if you're in the wildfire right now and you're having a massive headache and you're somebody that never has headaches, that's an issue. That's an alarm sign. That's something where you do need to go be seen by an ER physician just to make certain that your carbon monoxide level in your bloodstream isn't too high. Dr. Aguilar was talking about the long-term effects of air pollution. And we see this in heavily polluted areas all across the world. When you look specifically at the United States, heavily polluted area is right where we are right now, surrounding Long Beach and LA, right? This is heavy pollution in California. It's number one for ozone, which is another molecule we'll pay attention to. But it's number one for ozone. It's also number 6 and number 11, respectively, for acute and long-term particulate matter concentration. So that means that over the course of time, you have an increased concentration of particulate matter, but also acutely, you have an increased concentration of that particulate matter.
So we know that exposure to air pollution, specifically wildfire smoke, is linked to a risk of cardiovascular disease. This has been studied pretty extensively. As we're talking about wildfire smoke and PM 2.5, we know that this embeds deep into the lungs and it can get into our bloodstream. When we see it get into the bloodstream, your body has, and you mentioned this, a systemic inflammatory response. So it's releasing immune cells called macrophages. This then initiates what we call inflammatory cytokines. And when your body has this kind of chronic inflammation, it can actually promote atherosclerosis. So that's buildup of plaque in the arteries of the heart. This can lead to heart attacks and strokes for patients. Also, if you have patients who already have risk of cardiovascular disease, or they've had perhaps, say, a heart attack in the past, or risk factors for cardiovascular disease, so high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, obesity, we see that these patients' risk of heart attack and stroke goes up even more so. When we breathe in these air pollutants, it disrupts our autonomic nervous system. And our autonomic nervous system is responsible for managing parts of the body like our heart rate, our breathing. When we see a disruption like this, it can cause arrhythmias with the heart when the heart can't beat appropriately. And some of these arrhythmias can actually be very dangerous. They can be lethal. We also see when there's a disruption of the autonomic nervous system, the heart rate goes up, the blood pressure goes up. So patients who are chronically having elevated heart rates, elevated blood pressure, are at an even higher risk for a cardiovascular event. There was a study that actually came out in 2020, I believe, where patients who had long-term exposure to wildfire smoke had an increased mortality rate of upwards of 10 to 15% based off of cardiovascular disease. And then they did a repeat study a year later in 2021 that showed even if patients had a short-term exposure to wildfire smoke, they had increased ER visits, but related to cardiovascular. So we're talking about this and how serious the wildfire smoke affects our lungs, but we know that it can also cause significant damage to our heart as well.
When you look at your environment, right, which includes air pollution, that it has a serious health impact on what's going on inside of your body. And so it is not surprising when you read the data to understand that when you have this acute increase in wildfire smoke, you're going to see not only more respiratory disease, but you're going to see more heart disease.
Yeah.
You're going to see more neurologic disease. And you're also going to see more endocrine disease, because when you burn plastic, you're creating these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and these molecules also worsen diabetes. And it's really, really interesting when you look and then you understand that, oh my gosh, when you live in a place like California, when you live in Southern California, in a heavily polluted area, you just want to make sure your patients understand the risks. If I had a patient that had coronary disease,
Yes.
I would let them know, hey, listen, if they say evacuate, you especially
Need to get out of there.
right?
Yeah.
So true.